A conversation is about more than just talking, it's a skilled activity. In addition to what's said out loud, there's what's been left unsaid, the thoughts and feelings behind our spoken and unspoken words. But let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because although there are countless business books, guides, and manuals tell you how to diagnose these types of issues or problems, none tell you how to fix them. Well, our guest today says we just need some glue, some cultural glue.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Douglas Squirrel, has been coding for 40 years and has led software teams for 20. He uses the power of conversation to create dramatic productivity gains in technology organizations of all sizes. His experience includes growing software teams and consulting on product improvement at over 200 organizations in the UK, US, Australia, Africa, and Europe. He lives in Frogholt, England, in a timber frame cottage built in the year 1450. I've got a 1932 home. I thought that was old. And is the author of numerous publications, but we're going to talk about his latest, Squirrel's Tech Radar. Happy to have you with us, and welcome to the show, Douglas.
Glad to be here, Rob. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I want to dive right in. With you, I need to start with the elephant, or should I say squirrel in the room. I grew up with the name Jollis, and I heard the word jolly, a few times. What's it like growing up with the name Squirrel?
It's fascinating, especially when you realize I'm actually named after an actual animal called the Douglas squirrel.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you Google me, I'm in an SEO war. I'm battling to see who can be at the top of Google. I'm winning at the moment, but the animal sometimes gets ahead of me, and then I have to do more.
What is, I'm used to sort of the squirrels. I'm looking at my window, I see a squirrel. What does a Douglas squirrel look like?
So it's very similar to the ones you have, but you're not in the Pacific Northwest, are you?
No, I'm on the East Coast.
That's where they are. So they're out in Oregon, and that's actually where I was. That's why I have this funny accent, even though I'm very proud to be English. So out there was a British guy actually named David Douglas, who came and he named the Douglas fir and the Douglas grass and the Douglas butterfly and the Douglas squirrel. And so I wound up with that name. It's a long, long story. Take much longer than your podcast to tell the whole tale, but the whole tale, so to speak. But the point is that I'm named after that animal, and I get to hear a lot of jokes about it when I go to the Northwest.
Well, that's actually very interesting because you take all the steam out of whoever's coming at you when you go, yeah, no, that's right. I am the squirrel. It's no
Yep.
fun anymore. It was the same with me, by the way. People go, what are you, jolly or something? I go,
Yes, I
yeah, I'm
am.
kind of a happy guy. And they were like, well, that didn't go anywhere. We'll try something
Yep.
else. And off we go.
There you go.
All right, well, let's go. I want to make sure I have this right. You're a coder who's a subject matter expert on conversation. Now,
That is right.
how is that possible? Okay. I don't necessarily think of coders and conversationalists in the same sentence.
No, you don't. And there's a really good reason for that, which is that software is very unforgiving and not at all like a human conversation. You didn't start by telling me all of the ways I could talk to you and all of the complicated libraries that you had available and so on. That's what a computer does, right? Like when your
Yeah.
computer starts, all those words just kind of scroll across the screen and you get funny error messages. That's how computers talk. And people go into software because they like to talk that way. And they're good at the very binary black and white thinking that makes you able to talk to a computer. But the problem is that computers get used by humans, and it's really important for people like us to learn how humans talk so we can have conversations about the software. And I'm sure you've had conversations with people who fix computers for you or who work with computers, and you can't understand what they're talking about. It's jargon left, right, and center. And they never ask you any questions. So the good news is that for all of us, everyone, whether you work with computers a lot or a little or not at all, conversations are a skill. It's a thing you can learn, and it has tremendous business benefits. In fact, that's how I help technology organizations become highly profitable, become not cost centers, but profit centers, because I help the people in them and outside them have better conversations. And we can go into that as much as you like. The thing is that you can learn this skill. It's not something that you just either are born with or you're not. And if you go into computers, you can't have it. In fact, you can learn it just like you can learn to swim or ride a bicycle or play cricket.
Yeah. No, well, first of all, I applaud what you're saying. I work with a lot of people who are in career transition, and frequently it's not their hard skills that fail them, it's their soft skills that fail them. And they sort of throw their hands up in the air and say, well, I'm from, this job function, whatever, where we don't really embrace soft skills. First of all, I have to tell you, I hate the word soft skills. I call them performance skills, and because there's nothing soft about them. They're very important, and you are sort of a living proof. And almost, I don't get big-headed, Mr. Squirrel, but you're almost an inspiration in some ways, because you're a person who we would naturally assume would fall into one category. And you certainly, I met you for a few minutes now. I would say you're a pretty technical, analytical guy, and yet you're not afraid to embrace the performance side of a conversation. That's inspiring to me.
Good. Well, I wake up in the morning thinking, how can I inspire people? So thank you for helping me achieve that today.
Well, let me inspire you a little bit. You probably never heard of Harry Dent. His name comes to mind right now, but Harry Dent is an economist, okay? And when I started as a speaker, we were on the same speaking circuit, and Harry Dent was an economist like every other economist. But back in the 90s, I probably shouldn't. I'm not going to give his dollar figure, but I'm going to tell you, I was getting paid pretty well, and his number was exactly 10 times my number to speak for an hour. And why? Because he was an economist who could communicate in simple terms. He wasn't afraid. I think the others were like, well, I'm going to speak that way because I'm an economist. And he said, well, I think I can get the points across and communicate effectively and still be an economist.
Excellent. Yep, that's a fantastic skill, and one not enough of us technologists have for communicating about our technical matters. And the same direction, the other way, I work with rocket scientists and people in e-commerce and all kinds of other complicated domains, biotech, and I have to help them communicate to me because I don't know anything about what they're talking about. Don't get me in a wet lab, I'm going to blow it up. But I can get somebody who's a cancer researcher to explain their mouse model to me in a way that allows me then to help the technology folks to get them the right records, to get them the right data, to get them the right tools so they can cure cancer.
Right. Right. Have you always, has this always been a skill of yours? I mean, the old song, I'm a little bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll. Have you always had sort of both sides of this?
No, not at all. And in fact, you were saying I'm an inspiration. I don't know about that, but I'm certainly living proof that you can be really bad at conversations and you can learn to be better. Because what happened is that my co-author and I came across this ancient technology. It's like looking it up in like some ancient book in a dusty library or something. It was back from the 1970s that a clever guy named Chris Argyris had done research on how to teach people to have better conversations. And he had tremendous effects on businesses, but he wrote it up in a very scholarly way. Funny that he would be good at conversations, but couldn't explain his ideas. He wrote it up in this super scholarly way, and it wasn't really accessible. So what Jeffrey and I did is we took those ideas. We said, here's exactly how you apply them. Here are step-by-step processes. Here are the things you can do. So you actually stop being afraid of your technology team. So you build trust with them so that they are accountable to you in a meaningful way. And when you start building those skills and those tools and that culture, your technology organization becomes a real driver. It's a powerhouse instead of being all those weird guys in the corner.
Well, I think, as I say, you're kind of living proof. And by the way, what you described for writers is not uncommon. It's why there is a field of authentic copy editors. They go by different names, but they basically take people who communicate extremely well and clear, and for some reason they put their hand on a keyboard and they go into a completely different language. And so it's their job, and good publishers have them on their payroll because they'll find somebody with a great topic and great ability to communicate, but not through their hands. And that's how we sort of bring them back. But that's not uncommon, what you're describing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the trick is that that's a very good interpretive skill. So you're taking the writing that's not as good and you're making it better so it's comprehensible. It doesn't work so well when you don't have simultaneous translation in the boardroom typically, or in the canteen when you're discussing, how are we going to build this software? How are we going to market? Do we go to Germany first? Yeah, then because you don't have simultaneous translation, you have to get better at it. And the bad news is you actually have to do some work. So I'm always giving people homework and saying, go and try this, listen in this way, use these tools. But the good news is those are tools you can learn. You can actually get better. You do not have to be a chess grandmaster. You do not have to be a Olympic diver level in order to have tremendous results. You can practice and get better, just like I could, get better at running the 5K. Maybe I'm not going to win the race, but I'm certainly going to have better results. And you can do the same with conversations.
Well said. I actually, as a guy who teaches people how to sell, and some people will say, well, I can't present, I can't sell. Well, if you're a 2 out of 10, I'm going to make you a 5 out of 10. If you're a 6, I can move you to 8. I mean, but we never take a 2 out of 10, necessarily drive them up to 10 out of 10. Not that it can't happen, but you and I are in the business of truth telling. And I don't want to look at somebody and say, you're going to now be a 10. But how about we double your productivity? That's a pretty good day.
Absolutely. And I bet a lot of people watching and listening would say, man, I wish the last person that I had come and fix my computer was able to operate at like a 3 because I couldn't understand anything they were saying.
Right.
And you can get to that level of improvement, and you can get better at talking to them too. It's both sides, and everybody can improve.
Yeah. I'm going to jump on some of the tools that you use in about 20 seconds, but I do want you to know that what you're describing to me also is a critical skill for those who speak and those who sell, because even those who sell, particularly technical items, their ability to be able to simplify and get it into a conversation. I've done many seminars and I'm not offended when somebody says, I've heard that before. I just haven't heard it said quite that way. Now I can remember it. It's not only am I not insulted, it's one of the nicest things you can say, but that takes trial and error. That takes some work. And I can tell, and as you've just explained to us, you didn't wake up this way. You rolled up your sleeves and got to work. And that's why I know you think I'm sort of placating you, but I really do think it's inspiring because there's so many people, Douglas, who really think I can't get there. Why should I try? Well, we got a coder who's did just fine here. He's writing pieces about it, so we can do it. All right, let's talk about some tools. You got there tools out there. You got Agile and Lean software, some others. Fan or not a fan of these types of products?
I think they can be used for good and for ill. So there's lots you can do with techniques that allow you to deploy your software faster. And I teach people to do that. I teach people, in fact, to get new versions of their software into customers' hands once a day. So that's very frequent feedback on what you're building. And that requires conversations, of course. You have to be able to talk with the people who are using your software and understand whether they like it or not and why not. What have you done that works or what doesn't? So all of those tools are designed around helping you to do that. The problem is that people use them in a very rigid way. And just like, I could get a book on, How to Win Friends and Influence People, or a book on selling. And I could say, okay, it says here on page 12, I'm supposed to ask Rob now for his objections. And I could do that, and I'd be a terrible salesman. In the same way, people who pull out a book and say, well, this is what I'm supposed to do in the software development process now, so I'm going to do that, they never get very good results. What they're doing is following the dicta, the rules blindly, kind of like a computer. And because you're dealing with humans, that doesn't come out very well. It's much better to start using the tools as a way of getting to the conversation and then be good at the conversation. And that's, of course, the part that's threatening and scary and difficult. But there are lots of techniques you can use to improve.
Yeah. I'll tell you one of them. One technique, when you teach people to communicate, and that's what I do on my side as well. I kind of brought up through the ranks of corporate trainer as we learn a process, We role play the process. We put a tick mark for every piece of the process that was gained or lost. And that's how we'll score the process. And we wonder why people don't implement the process because you described it in a sense. I refer to it as kind of, they feel like they're in a straitjacket. And, people don't make decisions or I'm sorry, processes don't make decisions, people do. And so I actually have moved later in my career as a trainer to case studies that allow people, give them the freedom of telling me of what they've learned, what would be really necessary, and how will they deploy it, and what would be unnecessary. I want them to remove steps because that's what's going to happen the day after tomorrow when they show up in front of a customer or have a conversation. But that's, to me, it only took me 30 years to get there, Douglas. but that's how we win. That's how we win the game. Because I really do believe at the end of the day, when you and I get in there and are working with an individual, another company in consulting, don't grade us on today. I can make people laugh and entertain, and so I'm learning about you. I think you can as well. Grade us 6 months from today. Let's see what they implemented.
And what they remembered, because after you're gone, that's what's most difficult.
Right. The odd thing is I really believe in process. I love processes. I love things that are measurable. I just think we have to complete the sentence and say, now that we have it, let's figure out how to use this process, not as a weapon, but as something just to help us along this path.
And we've talked about a couple of those already. One of them being, if you release your software frequently, you get greater feedback. And that's a process that lets you engage more with the results. And another one, which we've touched on, is the methods for improving your conversation, which involve writing down what happened in your conversation and reflecting on how to improve it. And if you do those steps, if you do that kind of reflective learning, you make your conversation better, but you make it better in your way rather than saying, okay, it's page 72. I'm supposed to do this thing for 17 minutes now. That, as you know, in sales doesn't work. It doesn't work any better in team leadership or in technology.
No. So let's stay there for a second. Do you have a feedback process because now you're basically saying, I want you individuals, and I strongly encourage this, by the way, to, that's why I keep a journal, to constantly kind of assess what you're doing. Do you have a feedback model that you subscribe to or that you help others with?
Absolutely. And so I'll show you where to find the kind of detailed model, which is my book, Agile Conversations. And I'm not trying to sell it to anybody. If somebody writes me, I'm happy to send them a copy.
Wait. Don't run through that stop sign.
I know.
You're on a podcast for a reason. It's okay. Remember, we got a lot of salespeople listening. They're not afraid of the word sell. So what was the name of the book again?
It's called Agile Conversations. I'll hold it up again, but I'm not trying to sell it to anybody. I really mean it. I want people to use these techniques, and I'm happy to send the book to people who are interested in it. But,
okay.
The point is that what's in the book is a lot of exercises like the one I'm about to describe. I'm going to give you the easiest one, but then there are lots of other exercises, processes, tools you can use, which when you're in your next conversation will give you tremendous confidence, whether that's with an engineer, whether that's with a boss, whether that's with the chairman of the board. You'll be able to say, I know what to say next, and I know whether it's going to work or not. It's very hard work, but when you get to that stage, you'll be able to have a conversation with much greater confidence. So let me give you, Rob, a very simple example.
All right.
So you're keeping your journal, and in that journal, what I want you to do, next time you have a difficult conversation, one you're not sure about, and you're saying, man, I don't know if I did that very well. I might have really annoyed that person. Or I might have annoyed myself. You write down what you said and what the other person said, like a tape recorder was there, like we were on video like this. And you write down the words as best you remember them. But then on the other side, you write down what you were thinking, what was in your head. Now, Rob, I don't think, are you telepathic?
I am not.
Okay, most people seem to answer no to that. I keep hoping someone will say yes, because it'll be really interesting. But since you're not, you can't write down what the other person was thinking, because you don't have access to that. And that's part of the point. So you write down on the right-hand side what you said, and on the left-hand side what you thought, and on the right-hand side also what they said, but not what they thought. So as you get that down, then you're going to look for a very basic typographical characteristic. You're going to look for question marks. and you're going to circle all of the question marks in that fragment of the conversation. And what typically happens, and you get a score, you get 1 point for every question mark that you had, whether that's in the left-hand column or the right-hand column, but especially in the right-hand column, you want it over there. What you find often in a conversation where you really cared about the result, where you were really advocating something, you were really butting heads with the other person, there are no questions. There's 0 question marks. And the exercise, this very first, very basic exercise, is to introduce some question marks. Sometimes the homework I give to people that I'm coaching is to have a conversation like this, to go back and have that conversation again with someone, and they're only allowed to ask questions. They can't give their point of view. Now, you don't have to do that in every conversation, but it's a wonderful exercise because it forces you to be curious about what the other person is thinking. And when you're curious about that, remember, I told you can't write down what they were thinking, but you can start to fill that in because you ask it. You can say, I wonder why you said that. You just said that engineers are lazy and they're not interested in customers. What leads you to that belief? Where did that come from? And suddenly you start to find out why they thought that and why they had bad experiences with engineers in the past. And suddenly you can use their language and have a much more productive conversation, having learned something about their thinking, instead of saying, you jerk, why did you say that nasty stuff about my engineers? They are fantastic. That defensive reaction, which doesn't have any questions in it, doesn't lead you to a productive, business profitable conversation. It leads you to an unproductive conflict. Whereas asking the question about even something challenging gives you a lot more information and helps you drive the conversation forward. There's like 100 more of these things that you can work on, but that's the first one that you could basically do. And anybody who's listening to this podcast could do that this afternoon and learn a ton.
Well, I want you to know I wrote it down as fast as you said it, and I'm going to take a look at that. I'm actually going to while you were talking, I was thinking I want to go back to some of my journal entries, my most recent journal entries, because you're right. Usually, when I'm more emotional in the entry, I'm asking questions in the entry of myself, of the situation. And because I'm struggling a little bit and I'm looking and I'm searching, but very interesting. Okay, I promise I won't oversell this book, but just give me the name of that book one more time. And you don't have to hold it up because we're most people are walking their dog right now. But all right, it's Agile Conversations. Can we get it in the U.S. here? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's actually a U.S. publisher, so easy to get. And I'm like I say, get in touch with me. I'm happy to send you one.
Okay, and we'll do this at the end of the.
I said that.
Yeah, we'll do this at the end of the show. But let me do it right now. How does somebody get a hold of you if they want that?
Very easy. You just have to remember my name, and remember I'm named after the squirrel who lives in the Northwest. I was telling you this before. It's DouglasSquirrel.com. So as long as you can remember my name, I'm easy to find.
Yeah, and before we got going, we were talking about that. He's not only named Douglas Squirrel. There is an actual Douglas Squirrel.
There's an animal
on the East Coast, so
named after Mr. Douglas. So Mr. Douglas named a squirrel after himself, and here I am, Douglas Squirrel.
There you go. People. All right, let's stay on process here. You write about the 4 R's, matching your behavior to your beliefs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you through your paces now. You're a podcast host yourself. Let's see if you can do this kind of in a nifty, kind of nip it. Give me about 2 or 3 minutes on this, but just kind of brush by each one of them.
I certainly can. So we already just described one of the processes that exemplifies a lot of the tools. So what you're going to do is record what you said in a conversation. That's the first R. Then you're going to reflect on what's there. And I gave you one very simple example, which was circle the question marks. There's lots more you can reflect on and say, I was having this conversation with Rob. It didn't go very well. Here's why. And once you can discover why, you can revise the conversation. And when you revise the conversation, then you have a new view on it, and you have things that you can practice. And this is the real magic, is that you can take something that just feels very natural. We kind of do it automatically, and make it into something that's like practicing the piano or learning to dive off the high board. You can do something again and again and get better at it. So it's often good to have a practice partner to do some more practice. And once you've revised it, then you can repeat it, and you can try it again to say, all right, did this work? Oh, no, this didn't quite work. So you go back to the beginning. So that's the beginning of the 4 R's. So you're always recording what you say, reflecting on it, revising it, and then trying it again. And you can actually do that with a conversation. That's the thing that's surprising. We know we can do that when learning to write software or drive a car. It turns out you can do it with a conversation too, and you can really improve a lot.
Now, when you say recorded, are you talking about physically recording on a smartphone or something, or recording
Now,
it with, typing it out, putting it in? For me, I guess in a sense, I'm recording through my journal.
yep, whatever works for you. So some people like to carry around their phone and record the exact words. Writing a transcript is a bit of a pain. You can use the note-taking tools we all have now for that. That's nice, but it's not the most important thing. And often when you're in the middle of a difficult conversation, you're not like, oh, wait a minute, hang on, chairman of the board, let me turn on my recorder. That usually doesn't go over very well. And you're in the middle of shouting and screaming and pounding the table. So, you want to improve the conversation that's difficult, which you often don't have recorded. And if that's the case, don't worry, because what's most helpful is to write down what you remember about it. And the good news is that your brain is making mistakes. You're doing things like we talked about, like not asking questions. And your brain will make the same mistakes when you reconstruct the conversation, even if you don't remember the words. So it's totally fine to go back into the conversation and say, well, I don't remember exactly what Rob said, but I know he was really stupid. And what he said was this dumb thing, and it was something like this. And you'll write down what you were thinking, and you'll say, I'm thinking Rob's an idiot. And then you'll say, did I ask Rob any questions about why he's such an idiot? Well, no, actually, I didn't. And then you can start to revise your conversation and say, Rob, why do you have this stupid idea? And you'll discover it's not so stupid after all.
All right. Now, I got to tell you something.
The magic of improving your conversation.
All right. Now, you called me stupid and an idiot like 7 times in the last 60 seconds. Ease up on that example, will
I
you?
will. That's fine. But the thing is that you're not actually stupid or an idiot. But in that conversation, when you get really hooked in, that's what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my God, how could he possibly want us to roll out in Mexico? I mean, we don't even have a version of the software in Spanish yet. How are we going to roll out in Mexico? He doesn't understand anything. He's an idiot. In fact, there's some explanation for that. There's some extra knowledge that you have that I don't, like we're about to get bought by a major Mexican company or something like that. Whatever is happening, you have information I don't. And what I should be thinking in the conversation is, how can I learn what's happening for Rob? Even if I do finally conclude that we really disagree, I want the information that's in his brain, and I'm not telepathic. So I better ask him. And when I ask him, I will learn a lot more than if I just sit here saying to myself, Rob's useless, I'm not going to pay attention to him, I'm just going to yell at him until he agrees, which is what the natural thing to do is, right? That's what we do in conversations that are unproductive. You can convert those into productive conversations through exercises like the one we just talked about.
So if I were to use an example, I said, let's take Douglas Squirrel, who's an idiot. I'm just using an example. I mean, a complete knucklehead. Oh, all right. I'm going to stop
Where do you get those crazy ideas? Yeah, exactly.
All right. Just from my perspective, I'm just going to, so for me, and that, and this sounds like a real style piece. So I won't even box you in the corner, because I think everybody has their own way of recording. If you get my drift, I've always liked to write, because I find that when I'm writing, I set out to say one thing and I end up kind of exploring something completely different. In other words, it's very common for me. If I think I know when I'm going to write, I don't write as creatively. I don't write as much. When I don't have as much to say, but I want to say it, I find myself going into all sorts of different corners and areas, and that's where the real exploration comes from. So I guess, but that's my style.
Indeed, and that's your way of reflecting.
Right.
So the process is, you were asking about the 4 R's. You start with recording what actually happened. And you might, in your reflective way, be going and saying, well, what I could have said is I could have said this, and I could have done that, and I could have thought this. You wanted, when you're recording mode, you want to record what actually happened, because you want to get better in the moment. The problem is that if we could all go away for a week and figure out exactly what we're going to say to that colleague who's always, giving us a hard time, we would be fine. That would be okay. But you don't have a week. It happens right there. It happens in the board meeting, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this person said this. And off you go. And you're having an unproductive debate. You're having a conversation in which no one's listening to anyone. And what you want to do is get better at that in the moment. Can I tell you a fun story?
Absolutely.
So my co-author figured out that there was a tell. We talk about tells, which are kind of like
a poker
poker
tell.
tells. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So a thing that would tell, but the thing it would tell him is not I'm bluffing or something like that. It would give a signal to himself that he needed to approach the situation differently. What he would say is, and I'm doing this also, describe it for the people listening and walking their dogs. He would hold up his right hand and he would say, obviously, we need to do this. And he figured out that whenever he said that, first of all, it wasn't obvious and he wasn't listening because what he was saying was, okay, this idiot over there, they just need to hear this obvious thing. And for whatever reason, he would put his right hand up. So what he learned to do was to notice, hey, how did my hand get up there? This doesn't seem very good. And I'm probably about to say obviously, and he'd put his hand down and he'd say, now this is not obvious. What do you think about it? And so as he trained himself to notice his hand, going up in the air, he would get better and better at being more curious and not just telling people something that was obvious to him, which in fact wasn't right most of the time. So that was a very simple way that by reflecting and noticing what he was doing, he was able to interrupt an automatic process, which really annoyed other people. They got used to this way. He's always explaining this stuff as if it's obvious, and he's wrong. That was not helping him be a more productive manager, was not helping him be an effective technical leader. And that really, really improved his performance. And that's the kind of thing I help people do all the time, is to analyze their conversations, understand better how they can improve them, and then actually take the steps to do it.
Yeah. Well, you hit on something there also, because as you were talking, I was just thinking about different people I know who have tells. I have one of my daughters, for instance, who will raise one hand and gesture while she's speaking, but it's a little bit out of rhythm. It just doesn't follow what she's saying exactly. And I went a few years just telling my wife, I really don't want to say anything because it really helps me understand when we're on the truth here a little bit. But after a while, I had to say, look, your hand. But what I love about what you just said is, I think there's almost a book here. There's certainly an article of the type of tells that we all have, and they're not as dramatic as I'm making it right now, or perhaps you're making it, but it's a word, it's a phrase, it's an inflection, and we see it a lot, and we can tell when people are being less than authentic, for instance.
The most important thing is you're looking for your own tells. So you're looking for things that tell you when you're doing it. The danger is that we all try to mind read. And so we say, oh, okay, that other person, he's raising his hand. That must mean he's telling me something obvious. For him, that might be a sign of respect. That might be a sign that his hand is getting tired. There could be a lot of different explanations for why someone else is doing something. And unless you're playing poker, where I'm sure it's very helpful, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be doing that guessing of what someone else is thinking in a business conversation. Instead, what you want to do is pay attention to your own tells, figure out what's causing me to behave in a way that's unproductive, and be curious about the other person. So one thing I'll often coach people to do is to say something like, Rob, I noticed that you're getting red in the face and you've hit the table a couple of times. I'm guessing that might mean you're angry, but I'm curious if you could tell me more about that. Are you feeling angry? Because in fact, you might be feeling frustrated, you might be feeling annoyed, you might be feeling bored, you might have a lot of different emotions, and I can't know what they are, but I think I know. And that's the trick, is to get yourself not thinking you know what the other person is thinking. That would be unproductive conflict, but instead to get information from them by asking more questions.
Okay. All right. Two things. First, thanks for that, because I walked right into the exact example you were talking about, immediately wanting to read it to others. So I want you to know I'm hearing it, I'm registering it. I got it. But I want to be a little selfish here, because again, I've got a lot of salespeople out there. For instance, we study personalities and we take Myers-Briggs and DISC, but most salespeople don't really care what personality they are, because it doesn't matter. I'm trying to figure out what your personality is. And if you're a little bit more analytical than me, and I'm very social, for instance, I'm going to dial back this big hearty conversation up front, and I'm going to provide more numbers and statistics as opposed to it'll just do a good job for you. So I have to make the habit of trying to read others. Now, should I stop that? Or, but I even when I'm consulting with them, what maybe see, let me just finish it up. I think what I'm learning from you is, and then you can tell me I've got it most right or wrong, is yeah, but check with them first.
You
Is
got
that
it.
it?
Brilliant. You get an
Okay.
A. You've mastered
Okay.
it. You've mastered one of the first most important things to learn about really productive conversations in business, which is you can't stop yourself from making those assumptions. Just like if I
Right.
were in my silly example where you were red in the face and hitting the table, good chance that you're angry, right? If your boss comes to you and says, Rob, I got to have a little conversation with you, you're guessing there's probably some negative feedback coming. That's not unreasonable to guess. Your brain is going to do that. But the trick is to ask about it. You can say, are you feeling angry? Is this going to be a difficult conversation? Can you tell me more about how you're feeling? What's happening? Because when you confirm that, it then becomes discussable with the other person. The person can say, yeah, of course I'm angry. What do you mean? Didn't you realize that you just offended me? And you say, actually, I didn't know that. Could you tell me more about what was difficult there? And suddenly you're using their language. You're able to talk about it in the terms that are meaningful to them, using information that's actually valid. And instead of being kind of locked in your own brain with your own assumptions, you're operating with information that's valid about them. And of course, this is one thing that traps us engineers so much because we have to talk to computers who are terrible at telling us how they're feeling. They're terrible at telling us where their problems are, and we have to guess all the time. So we have to not do that with humans. It's a very natural thing to do. I don't want you to stop guessing, Rob, but I do want you to ask and check. And then it becomes discussable. And it's a much easier conversation when the other person says, yeah, I like numbers. Do you have some numbers? How about you show me a graph of that instead of where you might go naturally? And then we can agree on how we interact.
That's fantastic. I have to tell you, um, when I was approached by someone to book you, I looked and looked and looked, and I looked online, and I first of all, the name Squirrel really worked for you, just so you know. I said,
Good. Excellent branding.
a guy's got a name Squirrel. I'm in. I got to figure. I want. I know my first question, but I really appreciate. I had this hunch about you, and it started with where you're coming from. This coding world and yet moving into the performance skill side of conversations. Already to me it was almost an oxymoron. I needed to hear more, but I have to tell you, Douglas, you don't disappoint. It's not only is your information really interesting, but you walk the walk because you have simplified it in this conversation. I'm grateful for that. Mentors, do you have a couple mentors you want to give a shout out for?
Yeah. So actually, the main one is named Benjamin, and we talk a lot about him in the book. He's the guy who actually came to me and Jeffrey and said, "Hey, we should pay attention to these dusty old books on sociology." And I had the same reaction to him that you had to me, saying, "This is a guy who has a very technical background, and he's describing all these things that don't make any sense to me. And I got to find out more about that." So I'd say he's the main mentor, and of course my co-author. Jeffrey's an amazing guy who really helped me learn all about these techniques as we were writing the books. So those are the two I'd mentioned for sure.
Okay. And I mentioned Squirrel's Tech Radar, but you mentioned the book with that co-author. Give me that name of that book again so people can
That
find it.
is Agile Conversations. So here it is. Yeah, you mentioned the tech radar, which we didn't go into much. That's a whole method for assessing a tech team and understanding how good they are at conversations and delivering and other stuff like that. So it's a method for getting to understand quickly, like in an hour or two, even if you're completely non-technical, is your investment going the right place? So that's a different topic, using a lot of these techniques. But if you want the foundation, that's in Agile Conversations. That's got all the techniques we've been talking about in the material on how to reduce fear, improve trust, ability.
Right. Well, before we got started, everybody, I will tell you that we had a quick conversation and I mentioned, I like to just have a conversation. I'm always thinking I'm sitting at a Starbucks and Douglas gave me the thumbs up, nodded his head. But classic point, we went where the conversation went, which
Exactly.
is true to form. All right, we got both books on the table there at least. And that's great. All right, last question. How do people get a hold of you?
Yep. The easiest thing to do is go to douglassquirrel.com, and there you'll find my Twitter, all the different, I think I'm on Instagram. I don't know all these days, though these things these days. Isn't it called X now? Anyway, I'm on all those things. My email's there. My phone number is there. I actually like when people phone me out of the blue. So feel free to pick up the phone and call me. And my home address is there. Come and visit me in my 600-year-old house. So, I try to be as public as possible and have as many interesting conversations as possible. So head on over to Dover.com, find me, or just as a sounding board.
You bet. Like I said, really enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. I have the privilege or the opportunity to see this 1450 home that we're talking about. And from the angle I got, it looks every bit 600 years old, although he's taking very good care of it. It's on the smaller side, as he mentioned. But it looks great. And I'm just really tickled with the conversation. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being on the show. I'm grateful.
Likewise, Rob, it was a lot of fun.
Great. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.